Now, Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Malatsi, is defending his directive pertaining to the new draft rules for foreign telecom operators in South Africa, a move that has been criticized as something put in place to accommodate Elon Musk's Starlink. But the minister maintains that objective is about allowing more than just one new player into the market, which would then bode well for competition in the sector. He joins us now with more detail. Minister, thanks so much for your time today. And I guess let's start right there. The timing of the move has been a point of contention, and whether it does pave the way for Starlink to enter the local market.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to have a conversation on this important topic. We don't make policy nor regulations to suit individual interest or sectoral interest. The timing of the policy directive and the response to it is something that I have taken note of and understand. I understand why people, reach different conclusions on the basis of the timing, but sometimes the dots don't connect. And I'll contextualize it in this way. We began working on the policy directive in September last year, and the minister is empowered by Section 3 of the Electronic Communications Act to issue policy directives associated to matters, the national matters in the portfolio. On the 4th of October last year, I issued a media statement that I intend to issue a policy directive regarding the full introduction of equity equivalent programs in the ICT sector. And we shared the policy directive at the time with ICASA. That is the process. And we are now, after ICASA have submitted their reasons and are interrogated with those reasons. And what also comforts me here is that in late March or early April, I wrote to ICASA to say that I will be proceeding with the policy directive after having heard your reasons, because I believe there is an important question that must be answered, and I'll get to it now. So on Friday, and this is because government gazettes traditionally go out on Fridays, right? So we issued the gazette on Friday, and where we are now, it's a very crucial stage, because we are saying there is this policy directive which expresses this intention. It is now open for public comment. So any individual, any stakeholder in society, any player who has views on this matter, can you kindly submit those reasons to us, so that when we formulate the final policy direction, we've also taken into consideration the contributions that have been made by society to this end. The intention that we have with this policy directive, if you look at the Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, it makes it very clear that if you are a multinational seeking to do business in South Africa, there are two possible points of entry. One of those possible points of entry is through selling selling shares for local ownership, and that is why there is the reference to the less than 30% local ownership. The other alternative is through an equity equivalent investment program. And what does the equity investment program do? It seeks to allow companies who don't want to cede their ownership to local South Africans to do several things, and those things are outlined clearly. There are a minimum of 5 conditions. Invest in job creation and infrastructure. Do business with local suppliers. Invest in enterprise development, which means training of, SMMEs, and also research and development. And all of these interventions must be geared towards historically disadvantaged people. And you have the situation where in 2021, ICASA made regulations, and these regulations, unfortunately, focused on one component of equity, which was around ownership, and it limited that to that option only.
Minister, another criticism you faced here was around the channels that were used to get you to issue out this policy directive and whether you have cabinet buy-in. Talk to me about that.
So you would know, covering, business and economics, that the medium-term development plan is government's statement of its priorities over a 5-year period. That document was adopted by cabinet earlier this year after a series of engagements. That document encompasses, and by the way, it is a public document, so this is easily verifiable. That document encompasses the individual plans of each and every respective department. In our submission, we submitted the target for the full recognition of equity equivalent programs in the ICT sector. So this policy direction aligns with government's overall policies on investment and economic empowerment.
Now, I ask this because there have been various media reports on some ANC members that aren't particularly pleased with the move. Why is there disconnect, considering that ANC is part of the GNU and also part then of the development of the medium-term development plan?
Well, I am comforted by the fact that even when you listen to what the president of the country said post, the infrastructure investment conference that took place earlier this week in Century City, and also when you listen at what Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni said post the cabinet meeting on Wednesday in the press conference, they speak to the fact that equity equivalent programs have been and are part of our empowerment instrument. Again, if you look also at the statement that the ANC issued on Wednesday from Lituli House, it makes the obvious recognition that equity equivalent programs are part of our empowerment instruments and that regulatory reform is necessary for the GNU to reach and fulfill its goals.
All right, criticism aside, you say this move will open up the sector and bring in more investment. Just how much investment could this trigger?
So the ultimate establishment of figures will be measured, once the hurdle is removed. But we know, and you've got two doors open as points of entry, they are going to attract more entry points rather than relying on one door.
And while, you're looking at attracting investments, I'm sure you don't want to spur disinvestment. And I wonder if there's been consideration of potential pushback from local network providers, perhaps.
I am comforted by the fact that the Association of Communications and Telecommunications, which is a representative body of local, or network operators, issued a statement wherein they were saying that, for them, the push to get regulatory parity to ensure that the same rules apply for all parties is an important thing. And that is how they view this intervention, because it is done in that spirit.
And has it been a tricky task to, balance those risks while keeping the players that are already operating in South Africa happy and also trying to attract those foreign investors?
The important thing in here is trying to achieve a balanced, a fair, and a consistent regulatory instrument that does not prejudice existing players or new players, but ensures that there is the same rules applicable to all players at all times.
All right, Soli, we have to leave it there. Thanks so much for your time today. That was South Africa's Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Soli Malatsi.